Hey everybody, this is Aaron the Pedantic. So, where have I been? If you're familiar with what's going on in Texas currently, you might have an idea. It's been tumultuous at the least, and I feel gross because we haven't had water in several days, so that sucks. But I'm still alive, and that's why I was able to do a stream last night. Got a little bit too spicy. I had to edit it and re-upload it. That's why it had to be taken down, if anybody was curious. Anyway, so there was that. But what I wanted to talk about today is artificial challenge. So this is something that I have a severe issue with. It's something that is, I think, kind of inherent to the modern gaming mindset. That is something that really is kind of addressed differently in old school play. And I kind of wanted to talk about that today. So what do I mean by artificial challenge? What I mean by that is that basically the referee or the DM is taking the time to try and implement new ways of challenging the players, which isn't a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But the way that they're going about it is basically by defying the physics of the world, or by trying to specifically create things that are perhaps avoiding what the player characters are good at. It presents in several ways. So this is probably most commonly talked about with regard to a type of enemy that scales up with the level of the characters. So you encounter an orc at first level, and it has about a hit die. You encounter a hork. That's kind of spicy. An orc at fifth level, and it has about 5 hit die, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is something that people utilize sometimes to make it where it's like, well, I don't want you to just knock them down, just like blow right through them because you're really powerful now. You need to have challenging fights. No, motherfucker. That's not the way to go about it. The way to go about it is to scale the rewards in such a way that, knocking them down so easily, taking them out doesn't confer the same kind of benefits that you would normally get. This is a problem that people have whenever they run with milestone XP, because they're not really tracking any kind of progress in a way that's easy to scale. It tends to be, well, you need to get through this amount of story stuff. You need to accomplish this plot thing. And then at that point, we'll say, okay, that's enough. Sometimes people will use an approximation, just ignoring the, the XP and all that kind of stuff, because that's really fallen out of favor, XP, which is mind-boggling to me because I love XP in games. But the DMs will instead say, well, I think you've done about enough to get to the next level. So there you go, next level. But whenever you do that, you're kind of breaking the mechanism that you could otherwise be using to implement challenge in a way that isn't artificial. So, I just had a discussion with one of my players about this. So one of the things that happened in my old school Essentials game is that they had dealt with a horrendously difficult area. Now, this area was horrendously difficult, not because they were high level. In fact, they weren't high level. They were levels 1 through 3. I think the highest level in that group was probably actually a 4. Actually, the highest level in that group is a 4. And the thing that they were up against almost couldn't be killed by them. Period. The only reason that they even stood a chance is because one of the players, as far as killing the creature, one of the players had a character that had a magic weapon. Magic weapons are really cool, but they are also, whenever you're up against certain types of creatures, kind of a checkpoint, if you will. If you have the means to kill this thing, then you're good. If you don't have the means to kill this thing, then you really need to run, pretty much. And They managed to pull it off, although it was very close. It was very close to a TPK. They also had two characters that died, just smashed to pieces, and then another character died shortly thereafter because they're in a den full of magical traps because they went into the lair of a magic user, a very powerful magic user. So now how did they get there? Now the way that they got there was by exploring the second level of a kobold fort. And this kobold fort is full of roughly one hit die creatures or less, typically. Occasionally there were some 2s and maybe a 3. But for the most part, these things were not tough terribly, but they were fucking assholes and they were incredibly hard to kill. But once they got through that challenge, which was roughly about appropriate for the group that they had brought, and I say that even though many deaths had happened at this location, they basically found themselves way in over their heads. But they had some losses. They were very clever. They were able to deal with the situation. And I say that not because they had a magic weapon. That's not clever. That's just saying, that's just basically you showed up with the right tool. But they also had clever use of spells, clever use of positioning to funnel things. Otherwise, they would have been overwhelmed by several other things that also could not be harmed except for by magical means or by fire or that kind of thing. And so they were able to get through this incredibly harrowing situation, and they walked away with tons of XP because they found tons of valuable magical items. And that is the balancing mechanism. And then I had this conversation with a player from the other group that plays in the section A, with a site A. Site F, where basically there was a development that happened where all of these dogs that they had been using in order to kind of safely traverse this location had died. And he kind of asked me, was this something that happened because of the fact that we have a very successful strategy? And the answer is no. That's not why it happened. Why it happened was because there was a problem there that wasn't addressed. And the way that I feel about this strategy of theirs is that if they have a good strategy and it works, I'm not going to go out of my way to ruin it because they have intelligently decided how to handle things, and they came up with a good plan. They get the execution. It works. But here's the thing, is that there's only so much that they can get from this place. There's a finite amount of rewards that can be accumulated here. And that basically there is a point where you're not going to get the same kind of payback, or you don't get the same amount of payout rather from these kinds of locations that can be overcome by just having large amounts of dogs. So you get to a point where maybe you need 16,000 XP to get to the next level. And so you could just hire a bunch of dogs and then plow through these locations, assuming you can find them and assuming that it can be handled in that way. But at the same time, whenever you go through the place, you're going to find maybe enough for 500, 1,000, 200, 2,000 XP at the most. When if you were to go into a place that has a lot more risk inherent to it, then you might go in there and come out with 8,000 XP. And it might be something that you really, really had to fight for. But the question is, do you do the easy shit like 12 times, or do you do the hard thing twice? And then do you use all of your resources to make sure you get this very steady payout that has kind of a lesser failure state? Or rate, I should say. And are there even enough places to support for you to farm like this? Because there's not infinite adventure sites, really. And even if there are, because, this is a game that I plan on having go for a long time, you still have to basically use resources to go from one place to another. So eventually you're going to want to go to these places that are more difficult because they are going to have more rewards. So that's how I feel about it. Don't just inject artificial challenge into things. Another tactic that some people use in order to inject artificial challenge is to simply just raise the die roll that's required to do something. This is something that's more commonly an issue with, I would say, 3rd edition and beyond, because in the prior editions, in the TSR era, you have very set parameters for these things. If you are a thief and you need to climb up a sheer surface and you're level 1, you have an 87% chance of success. Boom, it's in the system. It doesn't matter like what's really going on. You may have some modifiers plus or minus depending on like, is it slick, or does it have like some occasional points of where perhaps you can rest for a moment, kind of like regain composure, then like regain your strength, or are you using tools, that kind of thing. So then you might have some slight modifications. But in the later editions, it's basically just like, well, I mean, the difficulty class is just going to go up. It's going to go up. It's going to go up. It's going to go up. Why is it going up? Is it because there's some particular reason? Maybe there's just more problem, like more difficulty because of the circumstances, or is it like a more complex trap, or is it that you're just doing it because if you don't do it, then the rogue is going to succeed on a disarm check every single time. And that's a thing that, people do. And I don't necessarily blame them, because I had a rogue in one of my games that could not fail, literally could not fail, unless I put the difficulty class up in the high 30s. It's just something that happened, maybe not high 30s, but in the 30s. And meanwhile, that means that if you're not you having all of these very high modifiers, then there's absolutely zero chance in hell. And sometimes that's appropriate, but sometimes it's not. So my whole thing, again, don't inject artificial challenge. If you want a place to be more challenging, then construct it very intelligently, is what I would say. With every dungeon that I have made, I have tried to balance the ideas of ecology and the idea of trying to anticipate how a player is going to experience the dungeon and affect it in a way that makes it where they can be surprised by it, and they can find themselves caught off guard, and where certain situations can kind of compound on top of each other. And this is something that someone who is creating a place, now this is in the in-game world sense, not the meta sense of me as the DM, but someone who's creating the place to keep people out or to make them suffer if they try to take your shit. These are the kind of things that they would employ. Why wouldn't they? That's one of the reasons why a magic user's lair is going to be an incredibly dangerous place, because it was created by an intelligent person who has a lot of magic at their disposal to try and keep people out. So of course it's going to be fucking terrifying. Whereas a place that's just maybe an animal den, it's like, okay, there's animals in there that we have to fight. That's scary, perhaps. Maybe there's some intelligent creatures, but are there traps? Probably not. Why would there be? Again, just don't inject artificial challenge. Like, let the victories happen when they earn them, and let the failures happen when they earn them, is what I would say. I would also say, obviously, don't do the opposite. Don't take away challenge artificially. So don't scale down. Never scale down. If you scale down, then the world just doesn't feel tense. It doesn't feel difficult. It feels like just a place where you're designed to succeed. And this is kind of again, it's that Skyrim effect of everything is going to be approximate to my level, and it's just not fun. It's not fun for a lot of us that like this old school play, and it's something that people that do combat as sport, they're the ones that really enjoy this. Those are the people that play the later editions, and they really just want a chance to use their cool powers and have a cool fight, and that's it. Whereas the old school people don't really play like that. I think that's all I really had. It's kind of gotten to be a little bit of a long one, and I apologize for that. But I have feelings on the issue. I just really want, whenever I play and whenever I run games, I want it to be something that feels real in a way. And in life, you don't go traveling, over to the mountains and find that all of the mountains are accessible to you. You find that there are mountains that are beyond your skill level if you need to climb up a rock face, if you're just not good enough at that kind of thing. And that's how it should be. We're trying to, this is part of the goal. Are we trying to do epic fantasy where it's like we are going to overcome the odds? Or are we trying to do an exercise of creative problem solving where the risks of failure are just, they're always there. Not they're always there because we force them to be there. They're always there because there's always going to be some kind of element of danger for as long as we play the game. And once it gets to a point where there's no more danger, retire the character and make a new one. That's the way to go. So that's all for today. Hope you all have a wonderful day. I haven't really been doing a whole lot, partially because of power and water and all that kind of stuff, but also because, since the wife is home with me, kind of distracted because she's home. So, want to hang out with her. But should have more videos rolling again in the near future. So see y'all soon.